The Bad Immigrant. Why it's difficult for white people to immigrate around the world. Most of the white countries are just too spoiled, it will be hard for white guys to live here. Beside this, Western, white and rich countries are definitely not the best example of multiculturalism, they only have a lot of immigration but not really mix, beside that racism still very active in most of these countries. So it's natural that everything will be weird and difficult for the white guys who never get confronted with such levels of poverty or simply forced to live with the cultural rules of others. I'm from Portugal, I grow in poverty, but in my country the multiculturalism work when we accept all races and habits as being part of our own culture. For in Western country, eating rice and vegetables every day only fix on some Asian countries' idea, but is part of the essential base of my country cultural food. So when I change to Indonesian I never feel any threat or difficult to take cold baths with a plastic bucket, or eat their food every day, to wash my butt after pooped. I have no difficulty to interact with local people, Muslims or Christians, and speak their language was also not a problem for me. Adaptation and humble behave, it may not work or being used in the richest Western countries. But Indonesian culture is part of my culture only because my country was never fully close to the world and caught standing in wars and imperialism whose such mentalities are only used to promote racism and extremely arrogance against the nations that Western powers overthrow around the world. Most of the Western foreigners are not even used to be nice and respect each other or other people, that's why this kind of community spirit that can help each other, trustful and friendly environments are not commonly exist in their homeland. Beside this, the Western world can have a very limited food habits, many times, no rice or a much of a humble meal is ever taken by this lords of the West. Unfortunately the world is a little bit like the Western white rich countries against the rest of the world in terms of cultural aspects, social life, and poverty lines, and everybody in the rest of the world are already exposed to the most common and deep levels of poverty, bad job conditions, cultural mixes and many other things that are often forget in the modern world. I can see that, when I don't get sick, my African and Arabs friends do not get sick too, but the white guy come here and he gets immediately sick. Then we have the social interaction, we the rest of the world are more likely to interact directly with people, because we have enough cultural bases to understand and to be understood by them. Our basic needs and the way of living are more well understood between us and the local people, social habits, manners, polite ways to behave in society, are all aspects who don't fail in my part of the world, but it miserly fail on countries like United States or England. White guys have no idea many times about the world around them. Unfortunately for most of this white guys, their way of life in South Asian is by keep rejecting the Indonesian food, manners, social politeness, and many times they even are incapable to make friendship with local people, they barely speak other countries' languages and they can be very offensive when they don't care about the habits and traditions of the local communities. But this is only happen because culturally white people refuse to change or to adapt to any other country, so why do they have the right to immigrate? They live now all over the world, but barely 10% of them can actually respect and adapt theirself to the other societies and traditions. If they act always so inflexible and arrogant like this, of course they will be on living hell, because people will dislike them and people will not want them around. It's a matter of respect and proud. But on the contrary with what this Western people usually think, is the Western people obligation to be respectful and follow the cultures when they travel or immigrate to any of these countries. At least they should not be so disrespectful and they should not behave so stupidly superior and pretentious toward everybody. The bad tendencies of the white people to yell at everybody, to not respect the elder people, things like that, if you don't speak their language, and you don't understand their culture, it's your own fault, because it's your duty to learn that before you travel there. Don't forget that a normal American citizen, English or Australian don't usually speak any other language beside their own native English, and that is not good for someone who wants to live outside of the country. People from other countries are not obligated to speak your English, learn that. For me, I speak Portuguese, I speak English, Spanish and already speak a little of Bahasa, Indonesian, and that is how people around the world usually do. When they come from the rest of the world, they learn other languages, they learn what is poverty and richness, they learn to be humble, and they learn to be respectful and to adapt in case of immigration. They deserve more respect from the Western countries, and Western are not respectful at all. Like I say, don't take this like an offense article, because it's made out of facts, can be checked every day on daily basis. Take this more like an advice from me, and how Western should now understand why it's difficult for people around the world to trust them and take them as brothers.